The rain fell like broken glass against the windows of the Santini estate. Inside, Don Raphael Santini stood in shadows, watching a young woman step out of a car she didn't own, wearing a dress that didn't fit her world. She looked up at his mansion with something between wonder and fear. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew, with the cold certainty that had built his empire, that she would ruin him. Or save him. Perhaps both. If you love stories where obsession meets fate and power bows to love, please like, share, and subscribe. Ariana Greco had learned early that beautiful things were not meant for girls like her. The chandelier above her head cost more than her mother's restaurant would make in 5 years. The marble floor reflected a version of herself she barely recognized, polished, borrowed, out of place. Miss Greco? A man in a black suit appeared beside her. Don Santini will see you now. She followed him through hallways that smelled of old money and older secrets. Her father had destroyed her first love 5 years ago, paid him to disappear, proved that poverty made you disposable. She'd sworn she would never be powerless again. The doors opened. Raphael Santini stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, staring at a painting she couldn't see. He didn't turn when she entered. The silence stretched until it became its own language. "You're late," he said finally. His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of calm that made dangerous men more dangerous. The train was delayed. "I'm sorry. I didn't ask for an apology." He turned then, and Ariana forgot how to breathe properly. He was younger than she'd expected. Mid-30s, perhaps. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from the same marble as his floors. All sharp lines and controlled beauty. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark, intelligent, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. "You're here about the curator position," he said. "Yes. You have no formal credentials. No museum experience. Your degree is from a state university I've never heard of." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Tell me why I shouldn't end this interview right now." Ariana lifted her chin. She'd survived worse than rich men's disdain. "Because I understand what you're trying to do. You don't just want someone to catalog your collection. You want someone who understands that art is memory, that every piece you've acquired is a piece of the history your family lost during the war. You want someone who sees the story, not just the price tag." Something flickered in his expression. "And you can provide that. I can provide honesty. I can provide passion. I can't provide a pedigree." "Honesty," he repeated as if tasting the word. "A rare commodity. So I've learned." He studied her in silence, and Ariana felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her borrowed dress. Finally, he moved to his desk and wrote something. 3-month trial. You'll work here in the estate. Room and board provided. Salary is listed there. He handed her the paper. The number made her dizzy. "This is non-negotiable. You start Monday." He returned to his painting, dismissing her. But as she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "Miss Greco? Don't be late again." She looked back. He still faced the painting, but his shoulders had shifted slightly, as if he was aware of her in ways that had nothing to do with sight. "I won't be," she whispered. Monday came wrapped in autumn fog. Ariana arrived with a single suitcase and a heart full of careful hope. The room they'd given her was larger than her entire apartment in the city. Windows overlooked gardens where roses bloomed despite the season. She started with the East Wing Gallery. 47 paintings, each one catalogued incorrectly or not at all. Raphael had been acquiring art for years, but no one had organized it properly. She lost herself in the work, in the quiet joy of bringing order to beauty. "You miss lunch." She jumped, spinning around. Raphael stood in the doorway, jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his elbows. It was the most casual she'd seen him, and somehow it made him more intimidating. "I didn't realize the time. You need to eat." He gestured toward a tray someone had left on the side table. "Maria brought this an hour ago. It's cold now." "I'm fine." "That wasn't a question, Miss Greco." She wanted to argue, but her stomach betrayed her with a quiet growl. Raphael's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Sit," he said. "I can take it to my room." "Sit." She sat. He moved to the window, giving her space but not privacy. Ariana ate, because refusing felt like losing some unspoken battle. The food was excellent, even cold. "The Bellini," Raphael said, nodding toward a small painting she'd been examining. "What do you think?" "I think it's a forgery." Silence. She'd just told one of the most powerful men in Italy that he'd been cheated. Ariana set down her fork, waiting for anger. Instead, he laughed. It was brief, rusty, as if he'd forgotten how. Explain. The brushwork is too confident. Bellini's late work had a tremor in it, arthritis, most scholars believe. This is beautiful, but it's not his hand. She stood, moving closer to the painting. But whoever forged it loved his work. You can see it in how they tried to capture his light. I paid 3 million euros for that painting. Then someone made a fortune from your sentimentality. She realized what she'd said a second too late. But Raphael was looking at her with something new in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. Sentimentality, he repeated softly. An interesting diagnosis. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You should have. That's why you're here. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive. To tell me the truth, even when it costs me money or pride. Even when it costs me this job? Especially then. They stood in the gallery's fading light, surrounded by centuries of beauty and lies, and Ariana felt the dangerous pull of a man who valued honesty in a world built on deception. I'll make dinner reservations, he said. For the painting's seller. I believe we need to renegotiate. He left her there, heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. The weeks unfolded like a careful dance. Raphael appeared in the galleries at unpredictable times, asking questions that felt like tests. Ariana answered honestly, even when honesty revealed his mistakes. Especially then. She learned his patterns. Coffee at dawn in the South Terrace. Business calls in the library from 9 to noon. Afternoons split between meetings in the city and paperwork in his study. But evenings he spent in the galleries, watching her work. You hum when you're focused, he said one night. Ariana looked up from the restoration she'd been cataloging. Raphael sat in a chair she hadn't heard him bring in, reading something on his tablet. How long had he been there? I didn't realize. Don't stop. He didn't look up. It's Mozart. The Requiem. You know classical music? I know many things, Miss Greco. Finally, his eyes met hers. I'm beginning to think you know just as many. Heat crept up her neck. I should finish this inventory. It's past midnight. Is that an order to stop? It's an observation. He set down his tablet. When was the last time you left the estate? She tried to remember. Days blurred together when you loved your work. I go into the gardens. That's not what I asked. I'm fine here. Fine. He stood, and she was reminded again of how he filled space, not with size but with presence. What a terrible word for what should be an extraordinary life. He left before she could respond, but his words stayed with her through the night. The next morning, there was a car waiting. Not the hired town car she'd arrived in, but something sleek and black with a driver who handed her an envelope. Inside, in handwriting that matched the precise control of its owner. Take the day. See the city. Remember what exists beyond these walls. RS. Tucked inside was enough cash to make her hands shake. Ariana went to the museums she'd only dreamed of entering. She stood before paintings she'd studied in books, feeling their presence like old friends finally met. She ate lunch at a cafe where no one knew her name, drank wine that tasted like sunlight, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt something like freedom. She returned at sunset to find Raphael in the garden, standing among the roses like he was part of the landscape. Thank you, she said. Did you enjoy yourself? More than I should have. Why qualify it? He turned to face her, and the evening light caught the angles of his face. Why not just enjoy it completely? Because I know how these things end. Beautiful days, generous gifts, men who... She stopped herself. Men who what, Ariana? It was the first time he'd used her first name. It felt intimate, dangerous, like a door opening that she shouldn't walk through. Nothing. Thank you for today. It was kind. I'm not kind. He moved closer, and she smelled earth and roses and that dark cologne. Don't confuse what I am with kindness. Then what are you? His eyes held hers, and for a moment she saw something underneath the control. Something hungry and vast and barely contained. That's what I'm trying to determine. He walked away, leaving her in the garden with a racing heart and the terrible understanding that she was in danger of a different kind. The man appeared during her 3rd month. Ariana was in the city gallery Raphael had recently acquired, supervising the installation of a new collection. She was arguing with the contractor about proper lighting when she heard a familiar voice. Ariana? She turned. Marco Delecci stood in the doorway, older than she remembered but still handsome in that easy, boyish way. Her first love. The man her father had paid to disappear. Marco. His name felt strange in her mouth after 5 years. I heard you were working for Santini. I couldn't believe it. He moved closer, smiling like they'd parted yesterday instead of years ago. You look incredible. What are you doing here? I'm the new acquisitions consultant. Started last week. His smile dimmed. Ariana, about what happened. We don't need to discuss the past. Yes, we do. Your father, what he did, I should have fought harder. I was young and stupid, and I let money scare me away from the best thing in my life. The contractor was watching. The installation crew was watching. This was too public, too complicated. Marco, I have work to do. Have dinner with me. Please. Let me explain everything. Is there a problem? Raphael's voice cut through the gallery like a knife. He stood in the entrance, perfectly composed in a black suit, but something in his stillness made everyone else step back. Marco's confidence faltered. Mr. Santini. I was just. You're Delucci. Raphael moved forward, each step deliberate. Human Resources told me they'd hired you. I've been meaning to review that decision. I'm qualified for the position. Qualification is the minimum requirement. Raphael's eyes never left Marco, but Ariana felt the weight of his attention on her. Ariana, a word. In private. It wasn't a request. She followed him to the small office at the back of the gallery. Raphael closed the door with careful precision, then turned to face her. Who is he? A consultant you apparently hired. Don't. His voice was quiet, but something sharp lived beneath it. Who is he to you? She should lie. Should maintain professional distance. But his eyes demanded truth the way they always did. Someone from my past. Someone my father paid to leave me. Raphael's expression didn't change, but the air in the room shifted. How long ago? 5 years. And now he's here, smiling at you like he has the right. He moved closer, and Ariana's back hit the desk. Does he? Does he what? Have the right to look at you that way. To ask you for dinner. To act like those 5 years don't matter. Raphael. Answer me, Ariana. Her name in his mouth felt like possession. No. He doesn't. Good. He braced his hands on either side of her, caging her against the desk without touching her. Because you're mine now. I work for you. That's not the same. Isn't it? His face was inches from hers, close enough that she could see the darker flecks in his eyes. Tell me you haven't felt this. Tell me these 3 months have been just about paintings and catalogs. Tell me you don't know exactly where I am in any room. She couldn't. God help her, she couldn't lie to him. This is inappropriate, she whispered. Yes. You're my employer. Yes. We can't we? His hand came up, hovering near her face but not touching. Tell me to stop, Ariana. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. I'll even fire Delucci if that makes you more comfortable. But don't lie to me. Not about this. The air felt too thick to breathe. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to remember what happened when you gave powerful men access to your heart. But Raphael was looking at her like she was the most valuable piece in his collection. Rare, precious, irreplaceable. I don't know what this is, she said finally. Neither do I. His thumb brushed her cheek, barely a touch. But I know I haven't stopped thinking about you since you walked into my home. I know I rearranged my schedule to be near you. I know I bought that city gallery because you mentioned once that you wished you had more space to work. You bought a gallery because of me? I'd buy the entire museum district if you asked. It should have sounded like arrogance. Instead, it sounded like confession. Raphael, a knock shattered the moment. Raphael stepped back smoothly, his mask sliding into place so quickly she almost doubted what had just happened. Come, he said. Marco opened the door, his expression carefully neutral. I wanted to apologize if I overstepped earlier. I didn't realize. He looked between them, and something knowing entered his eyes. I'll be more professional going forward. See that you are, Raphael said. Ariana, finish the installation. I have meetings in the city. He left without another word, without even looking at her again. But his cologne lingered, and her heart still raced, and Marco was watching her with the sad understanding of someone who'd just realized he'd lost something he'd thought he could reclaim. He's in love with you, Marco said quietly. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe, but I know that look. And I know you, Ariana. Or I did once. He moved toward the door, then paused. Be careful. Men like Santini don't love halfway. When they fall, they consume everything. He left her in the office, surrounded by inventory lists and insurance forms, her skin still electric from Raphael's almost touch. She tried to focus on work. Tried to pretend the confrontation hadn't happened. But Raphael's words echoed through every gallery, every catalogued painting, every quiet evening when he appeared to watch her work. Tell me you don't want this. The terrible truth was that she did want it. Wanted him with an intensity that terrified her. A week passed. Raphael maintained perfect professional distance, speaking to her only about work, never referencing what had happened in the city gallery. But his eyes followed her constantly, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Marco tried twice more to ask her to dinner. Both times, Raphael appeared seemingly by coincidence, his presence ending the conversation before it could begin. He's having you followed, Marco said one evening, frustration clear in his voice. Don't be dramatic. Am I wrong? Have you noticed how he always knows where you are? How he appears whenever I try to talk to you? She had noticed. But she'd also noticed the way Raphael's jaw tightened when Marco smiled at her, the way his hands flexed when Marco stood too close, the barely controlled fury that lived beneath his calm exterior. This job matters to me, she said. I can't afford complications. Then tell him to back off. Marco, I made a mistake 5 years ago. I let your father buy me off because I was scared and stupid. But I've thought about you every day since then. I came back for you, Ariana. Give me a chance to prove I'm not that coward anymore. Before she could respond, he kissed her. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds. Ariana pushed him away immediately, anger flooding through her. But the damage was done. Raphael stood in the doorway, perfectly still, watching them with eyes gone cold and dark. Mr. DeLucci, he said softly. You're fired. Security will escort you out. You can't. I own this building. I own the gallery. I own every painting on these walls. His gaze shifted to Ariana, and she felt the ice in it. I can do whatever I want. 2 security guards appeared as if summoned. Marco looked at Ariana one last time, something like pity in his expression, then let himself be led away. Raphael and Ariana stood alone in the gallery. That wasn't what it looked like, she said. Wasn't it? Because it looked like DeLucci kissing you. Touching what's mine. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. No. He moved toward her, slow and predatory. Then why do you watch for me every evening? Why does your breath change when I enter a room? Why do you wear the scarf I commented on twice as often as any other? That doesn't mean. It means everything. He was close now, close enough that she could see the fury and hunger and desperate control fighting in his expression. I have tried to give you space. Tried to be professional. Tried to ignore this thing between us. But watching him touch you, kiss you, his hand fisted at his side. I won't be civilized about you, Ariana. I can't. You fired him because of a kiss I didn't ask for. I fired him because he touched something precious to me without permission. Because he looked at you like you were a second chance instead of a miracle. Raphael's voice dropped to something dark and raw. Because I have spent 3 months falling in love with you, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The world tilted. Raphael, I know all the reasons this is wrong. The power imbalance. Your position. The fact that you could never say no to me without fear of consequences. He stepped back, giving her space she didn't want. So I'm removing the obstacle. You're not fired, Ariana. But you're free to leave. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever you choose. With 3 months severance and a reference that will get you any position you want. You're giving me freedom to choose you? I'm giving you freedom to choose yourself. If that includes me, then. He stopped, and for the first time since she'd met him, Raphael Santini looked uncertain. Then I'll spend my life proving I'm worth the risk. Ariana stared at him, this man who commanded empires and inspired fear, now standing before her offering surrender instead of conquest. And if I choose to leave? Pain flickered across his features. Then I'll let you go. I'll hate it. Hate myself. Spend every day wondering what I could have done differently. But I'll let you go. Because you love me. Because I love you more than I love my pride. It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. No games, no manipulation, just raw truth laid bare. Ariana thought of her father destroying her first love with money. Of Marco leaving because the price was right. Of every time she'd been taught that love was a transaction, that people could be bought and sold and discarded. Raphael watched her, waiting, giving her the space to choose freely. I'm not leaving, she said. You should think about. I'm not leaving, she repeated, moving closer. But I need you to understand something. I won't be owned. I won't be controlled. I won't be another beautiful thing in your collection. You were never that. You could never be that. Then what am I to you? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. Everything. The answer to questions I didn't know I was asking. The reason I wake up. The only thing in my life that feels real. Raphael. I love you, Ariana. I love your honesty and your passion, and the way you hum Mozart when you think no one's listening. I love how you see beauty in forgeries, because you understand that loving something imperfect doesn't make the love less true. I love. His voice cracked slightly. I love you, and it terrifies me because I don't know how to do this halfway. Then don't, she whispered. She kissed him. Raphael made a sound low in his throat, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like claiming and surrender all at once. His hands tangled in her hair, hers gripped his shoulders, and 5 years of loneliness and 3 months of tension ignited into something that felt like coming home and catching fire simultaneously. They broke apart, breathing hard. My apartment, he said roughly. Not here. When I have you properly, it won't be in a gallery where anyone could interrupt. Heat flooded through her. When? When? Not if. His thumb traced her lower lip. Say yes, Ariana. Say you'll give me this chance. She thought of all the reasons to say no. The power he held, the danger of loving someone who consumed everything, the scars from the last time she'd trusted a man with her heart. But she also thought of the way he'd valued her honesty over his pride. The way he'd offered freedom instead of demanding surrender. The way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. Yes, she whispered. Raphael's smile was fierce and possessive and beautiful. Then let's go home. His apartment in the city was nothing like the estate. Smaller, more personal, filled with books and art that had been chosen for love rather than investment. He poured them wine with hands that weren't quite steady. I need you to understand something, he said, standing by the window overlooking the glittering city. My world is complicated. Dangerous sometimes. There are people who would use you to hurt me. Then we'll be careful. Careful. He laughed without humor. I don't know how to be careful with you. From the moment you walked into my home, I've been the opposite of careful. I've been reckless and obsessed and, he set down his wine. I've been in love. Ariana moved to him, took his face in her hands the way he'd done to her. Then be reckless. Be obsessed. Be in love. But be honest with me. Always. Even when the truth is dangerous? Especially then. He kissed her softly, almost reverently. Then deeper, with the hunger she'd seen lurking in his eyes for months. His hands mapped her body like she was terrain he was memorizing, claiming, learning by touch. They moved to his bedroom wrapped in each other. And when he laid her down on sheets that smelled like him, when he showed her with hands and mouth and careful attention exactly how completely he wanted her, Ariana finally understood the difference between being owned and being cherished. Raphael made love to her like she was sacred. Like every touch was worship, every kiss a prayer, every whispered word a vow. After, wrapped in his arms while the city lights painted patterns on the ceiling, she felt safe for the first time in 5 years. Stay, he murmured against her hair. Not just tonight. Stay with me. I don't think that's what bosses typically say to employees. Then quit. I don't need a curator as much as I need you in my life. He pulled her closer. I'm serious, Ariana. I want you here. In my home, in my bed, in every part of my life. I want, he stopped. What do you want? Everything. Forever. You. His hand found hers in the darkness. Marry me. She went very still. Raphael. Too fast. I know. But I also know I've never been more certain of anything. You're it for me, Ariana. The only woman I'll ever love like this. So yes, it's too fast, and yes, you should probably say no, but I'm asking anyway because I'm done pretending I'm civilized about you. Ariana thought about running, about protecting herself, about all the sensible reasons to say no to a man who'd known her 3 months and was already planning forever. But she also thought about how he'd looked at her in the gallery, like she was the only real thing in a world of beautiful fakes. How he'd given her freedom when he could have demanded obedience. How he'd fired a man for kissing her not because he was jealous, but because he valued her consent above all else. Ask me again, she said, in 3 months. If you still feel the same way, if I still feel this way, then yes. I'll marry you. Raphael rolled to face her, his eyes bright even in the darkness. 3 months. 3 months. I'll still feel this way. Then you'll have your answer. He kissed her slowly, sealing the promise. And Ariana let herself hope that maybe, finally, she'd found a love that couldn't be bought or broken or destroyed by men with money and power. Because Raphael Santini wasn't trying to own her. He was trying to earn her. The next 2 weeks were the happiest of Ariana's life. Raphael was attentive without being possessive, passionate without being demanding. They split time between the estate and his city apartment, working together during the day and discovering each other at night. She learned that he drank his coffee black and took business calls at dawn because time zones demanded it. That he'd built his empire from almost nothing after his family lost everything in his grandfather's bad investments. That he collected art because beauty was the one thing money couldn't corrupt, only preserve. He learned that she hummed when she was nervous, not just focused. That her father had destroyed her first relationship because he'd wanted to teach her that poverty made you disposable. That she'd spent 5 years proving him wrong, building a career on talent and determination, refusing to believe that love required a trust fund. They fit together in ways that felt inevitable, like 2 pieces of a puzzle finally aligned. But paradise, Ariana was learning, always came with a price. It started with small things. A car that followed her to the market. A man in a cafe who watched too intently. Calls that Raphael took in another room, his voice low and sharp. "Is something wrong?" she asked one evening. "Business complications." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Nothing for you to worry about." But she did worry. Because the security at the estate doubled. Because Raphael started having her driven everywhere instead of letting her take the train. Because she woke one night to find him standing at the window, staring into darkness with an expression that made her blood cold. "Raphael, go back to sleep, my love. Not until you tell me what's happening." He was quiet for a long moment. "Finally, there are people who are unhappy with some of my recent business decisions. They're making noise, trying to cause trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that involves leverage. Pressure points. Ways to hurt me." He turned to face her, and in the moonlight his expression was fierce. "You're my biggest vulnerability now, Ariana. Everyone knows it. I've made no secret of how I feel about you. Should I leave? Go somewhere safe until—" "No." The word was harsh, immediate. "You don't leave. You don't hide. You stay right here where I can protect you." "That sounds like a cage. That sounds like love." He came to the bed, cupped her face. "I won't lose you. I won't let them take you from me. I'll burn down everything I've built before I let them touch you." It should have sounded romantic. Instead, it sounded like a promise and a threat all at once. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. "What business decision made them this angry?" His jaw tightened. "I refused to partner with some people who wanted to use my galleries for money laundering. I reported them instead. And now they're looking for ways to punish me. By hurting me. By trying to. They won't succeed." But Ariana saw the fear underneath his confidence. Saw how this man who commanded empires was terrified of something he couldn't control. She kissed him, trying to pour reassurance into the touch. "We'll be careful." "Will." The window exploded. Raphael threw himself over her as glass rained down. Shouts erupted from outside. Alarms screamed. And through it all, Ariana heard the sound that would haunt her nightmares. A sharp crack that could only be gunfire. "Stay down," Raphael ordered, already moving. He pulled her off the bed, behind the heavy dresser that suddenly seemed strategically placed. "Raphael, stay. Down." He was on his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. Security flooded the room seconds later. "Clear," one of them reported. "Looks like a warning shot. No follow-up." Raphael's expression was carved from ice. "Find them. Now." The security team dispersed. Raphael turned to Ariana, and the mask cracked. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry. God, Ariana, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. My choices, my enemies, and you're the one who almost," his voice broke. "I'm fine. We're fine. You're not safe with me." He pulled back, and what she saw in his eyes terrified her. "You should leave. Go somewhere they can't find you. Somewhere I can't put you in danger." "No. Ariana. No." She gripped his face, made him look at her. "I'm not running. I'm not letting them win. And I'm not leaving you. They shot through my window. They could have killed you. But they didn't. And now we know what we're facing." She kissed him hard, fast. "So we face it together. Or do you not trust me to stand beside you?" "I trust you with everything." "That's the problem. Then trust me with this. Trust me to choose you even when it's dangerous." Raphael stared at her, and she watched him wage some internal war. Finally, he nodded. "But we do this my way. Extra security. No leaving without guards. And you tell me immediately if anything feels wrong. Deal." "And Ariana?" His hands tightened on her shoulders. If it comes down to choosing between my empire and your safety, there's no contest. You win. Every time. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But even as she said it, Ariana felt the weight of what she'd committed to. Loving Raphael Santini meant stepping into his world. A world where windows exploded and gunfire punctuated the night. She'd thought her father's cruelty had been her hardest lesson. She was about to learn that love could be so much more dangerous than hate. Will Ariana survive the dangers of Raphael's world? Can their love withstand the threats closing in? And when the ultimate choice arrives between power and love, what will Raphael sacrifice to keep her safe? The estate transformed overnight into a fortress. Guards patrolled every entrance. Security cameras multiplied like careful eyes. Raphael hired a personal protection team for Ariana, 3 professionals who followed her everywhere with polite efficiency and concealed weapons. She hated it. Hated the loss of freedom, the constant surveillance, the way every spontaneous moment now required planning and clearance. But she hated the fear in Raphael's eyes more, so she endured. I need to go into the city, she said one morning. The restoration expert is arriving today for the Caravaggio evaluation. Send Marco. Raphael stopped himself. Send someone else. It's my project. I should be there. Then I'm coming with you. You have meetings all day. I'll reschedule. His tone left no room for argument. They drove into the city in an armored car with 2 security vehicles flanking them. Ariana watched the familiar streets pass and felt like a stranger in her own life. The gallery was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. The restoration expert should have been there already, but the space was empty except for paintings and shadows. Something's wrong, Raphael said immediately. Back to the car. Now. But the door they'd entered through was already blocked. 3 men stepped from behind the larger installations, and Ariana's blood turned to ice when she saw the guns. Don Santini. The leader smiled, and it was the smile of something predatory and pleased. We've been hoping for a chance to talk. Raphael moved in front of Ariana, his body a shield. You have 30 seconds before my security team comes through that door. Your security team is currently occupied with a small fire we arranged at your East Wing gallery. Very distracting. Should buy us at least 10 minutes. The man's eyes slid to Ariana. Is this the girl? Pretty. I can see why you'd risk everything for her. What do you want, Marconi? The same thing I wanted 3 months ago. Partnership. Your galleries are business arrangements. We wash our money, you profit from the protection we provide. I already gave you my answer. Yes. And that answer put 6 of my associates in prison. Marconi's smile vanished. So now I'm adjusting the terms. You agree to our partnership, or your pretty curator becomes an example of what happens when people refuse me. Ariana felt Raphael's entire body tense. Touch her and I'll destroy you. Not just your business, your family, your legacy, everything you've built. I'll burn it all to ash. Bold words from a man with a gun pointed at his heart. I don't need weapons to destroy you. I need a phone call. Raphael's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. I have enough evidence to put you away for life, Marconi. Financial records, witness statements, documentation of every crime you've committed in the last 5 years. It's all stored safely, ready to be delivered to the authorities if anything happens to me or mine. Marconi's expression flickered. You're bluffing. Am I? Ask yourself if you're willing to bet your freedom on it. The silence stretched. Ariana barely breathed. Then Marconi laughed, but it sounded forced. You always were smarter than you looked, Santini. Fine. But this isn't over. One day you'll slip. And when you do, you'll be in prison, old man. Where you belong. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marconi cursed, gestured to his men. They melted away through a back exit seconds before police flooded the gallery. Raphael's security team arrived moments later, fury and apology written across their faces. But Raphael just pulled Ariana into his arms and held on like he'd never let go. It's okay, she whispered against his chest. We're okay. This time. What about next time? Or the time after that? He pulled back, and she saw raw fear in his eyes. I can't protect you from this, Ariana. Not completely. Not while Marconi's still free and angry and looking for ways to hurt me. Then we make sure he can't hurt us. How? She thought of the evidence he'd mentioned, the years of documentation he'd compiled. You said you have proof of his crimes. Give it to the authorities. Let them lock him away permanently. It's not that simple. Marconi has connections, politicians who owe him favors. If I move against him directly, I start a war I might not win. So we find another way. Ariana took his hands, held them tightly. We're smart. We're careful. And we have something he doesn't. What's that? Each other. Something worth fighting for. She kissed him softly. He's alone, Raphael. Powerful but alone. That makes him vulnerable. Raphael studied her face like he was memorizing every detail. When did you become so fierce? When I fell in love with a man worth being fierce for. He kissed her then, desperate and deep, and she tasted his fear and determination and desperate love. Okay, he said finally. We do this carefully, strategically. But Ariana, if it gets too dangerous, if there's any sign that he's planning something worse, then we'll deal with it. Together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the word's weight. They left the gallery surrounded by guards, but Ariana felt stronger than she had in days. Because she'd seen Raphael face down armed men to protect her. Because he'd valued her safety over his pride, her life over his empire. And because for the first time since the window shattered, she believed they might actually survive this. The next week was a careful chess game. Raphael met with lawyers, accountants, and contacts in law enforcement. He built a case against Marconi that was airtight and devastating. Years of money laundering, extortion, and violence documented with the precision of someone who'd been planning this confrontation for years. Why didn't you do this before? Ariana asked one evening as they reviewed documents in his study. Because I was trying to stay out of it. To keep my hands clean and my business separate from the ugliness. He looked at her, and his expression was raw. But the moment he threatened you, that neutrality became irrelevant. I'll wade into any ugliness, fight any war, if it means keeping you safe. Raphael, I mean it, Ariana. I've spent my life building an empire, maintaining my reputation, staying above the criminal elements that infect this city. But I'd burn it all, every gallery, every painting, every carefully cultivated connection, if that's what it takes to protect you. The weight of his words settled over her. I don't want you to destroy yourself for me. You're not hearing me. He pulled her into his lap, held her close. You are myself now. The most important part. Losing you would destroy me more completely than losing everything else combined. That's too much pressure. It's just the truth. His hands framed her face. I love you, Ariana. Not the careful, measured love of someone hedging their bets. I love you with everything I am and everything I have. Completely. Irrevocably. Forever. She kissed him, pouring every feeling she couldn't articulate into the touch. 3 months, she whispered against his mouth. What? 3 months since you first asked me to marry you. Time's up. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Ask me again. Raphael's expression transformed. Surprise melting into joy, melting into something fierce and possessive and beautiful. He slid from the chair, taking her with him, until they were both kneeling on the expensive carpet of his study. Ariana Greco. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small velvet box she'd never seen before. I've been carrying this since the day after I first asked you. Hoping. Waiting. He opened it to reveal a ring that stole her breath. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, antique and perfect. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life earning the gift of your trust? Will you be my wife, my partner, the other half of my soul? Tears blurred her vision. Yes. Yes. Yes, Raphael. I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then kissed her with a reverence that made her heart ache. I love you. I love you too. They made love right there on the study floor, surrounded by evidence of crimes and corruption, finding beauty and hope in the middle of darkness. And when Ariana lay in his arms afterward, the ring catching lamplight on her finger, she felt like she'd finally found the home she'd been searching for. We should tell people, Raphael murmured against her hair. Announce the engagement. Your family will love you, and if they don't, they'll learn to. He kissed her temple. I want everyone to know you're mine, that we're building a life together. Even with Marconi still out there? Especially then. Let him see that he failed. That his threats only made me hold you tighter. It was reckless and romantic, and so perfectly Raphael that Ariana could only smile. Okay, let's tell the world. The engagement announcement appeared in all the major papers the next morning. By noon, Ariana's phone was flooded with congratulations from colleagues, friends, people she barely knew who'd heard the news. But it was the call from her father that made her hands shake. Ariana. His voice was the same as she remembered, cold, disappointed, forever finding her wanting. I saw the announcement. Santini. You're marrying him? Yes. You realize what people will say? That you slept your way into wealth? That you're just like every other gold digger who... I realize that you destroyed my first relationship because you thought poverty made me worthless, she interrupted, years of anger finally finding voice. I realize that you taught me love was a transaction. But you were wrong, Papa. Raphael loves me for who I am, not what I can give him. And I love him the same way. Love. Her father laughed bitterly. You're naive if you think love matters more than. It matters more than everything. More than money, more than status, more than your approval. She took a breath. I'm getting married, Papa. With or without your blessing. But I'd like you there. Silence. Then, I'll think about it. He hung up. Ariana stared at the phone, feeling hollow and vindicated all at once. Your father? Raphael appeared in the doorway. How did you know? You have a particular expression when you talk to him. Like you're bracing for impact. He moved to her, pulled her close. What did he say? The same things he always says. That I'm naive. That love doesn't matter. That marrying you makes me a gold digger. Raphael's jaw tightened. Do you want me to talk to him? No. I need to handle this myself. She leaned into his embrace. But thank you for offering to defend me. Always. From him, from Marconi, from anyone who tries to hurt you. He tilted her face up. You're precious to me, Ariana. The most precious thing in my world. I'll spend my life making sure you know that. I already know it. She kissed him softly. That's why I said yes. The raid happened 3 days later. Federal agents descended on Marconi's operations with the precision of a carefully planned attack. Raphael's evidence had given them everything they needed: financial records, witness statements, documentation of crimes spanning years. Marconi and 17 of his associates were arrested simultaneously. By evening, the news was full of stories about the takedown of one of Italy's most notorious criminal organizations. Raphael watched the coverage with careful satisfaction. It's done. You're sure? No retaliation, no revenge attempts. Marconi's assets are frozen. His organization is scattered. And I made sure the evidence trail doesn't lead back to me. The authorities think they developed the case independently. He turned to her. You're safe now, Ariana. Finally, completely safe. The relief was overwhelming. Ariana hadn't realized how much tension she'd been carrying until it released all at once. It's really over? It's really over. He pulled her close. Now we can focus on the important things. Like planning a wedding. She laughed, giddy with relief and joy. How soon? Tomorrow wouldn't be soon enough. But I suppose we should give people time to make arrangements. His eyes gleamed. 3 months? That seems to be our lucky timeline. 3 months, she agreed. Small ceremony? Whatever you want. Big, small, just us. I don't care as long as you're wearing white and promising forever. I promise forever right now. Then wear white and do it in front of witnesses, so I have proof. He kissed her, deep and claiming. Because I'm keeping you, Ariana Greco. For the rest of our lives. The wedding planning consumed the next months. Raphael proved surprisingly invested in every detail: flowers, music, guest list. He vetoed her first dress choice. Beautiful but not extraordinary, and you deserve extraordinary. Approved her second choice with reverent appreciation, and personally selected a venue that took her breath away. The same gallery where we first kissed, she said, looking around the space that had been transformed with flowers and candlelight. Where you first kissed me, he corrected. Where you chose me despite every logical reason to run away. Seemed appropriate. Her father had agreed to attend, though his approval remained grudging. But Ariana found she didn't need it anymore. She had Raphael's love, his devotion, his promise of forever. That was enough. The night before the wedding, Raphael found her in the gardens of the estate. She'd slipped away from the rehearsal dinner, needing a moment of quiet before everything changed. Cold feet? He asked, coming to stand beside her. No, just remembering. Remembering what? The first time I came here. How overwhelming it all was. How you stood at that window and wouldn't look at me. She smiled at the memory. I thought you were arrogant. I was terrified. He took her hand, the engagement ring catching moonlight. I took one look at you and knew my life had just become infinitely more complicated. You were dangerous from the start. Dangerous? To my control. My carefully ordered world. My conviction that I was better off alone. He pulled her closer. You destroyed every defense I had, Ariana. Made me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need. Made me feel things I'd thought I was too disciplined to feel. Is that a complaint? It's gratitude. He kissed her softly. Tomorrow, I marry the woman who saved me from a life I didn't realize was empty. Who taught me that love is worth any risk, any sacrifice, any vulnerability. Thank you for that. For choosing me when you could have chosen safety. You are my safety. She wrapped her arms around him. Everything else is just noise. They stood in the garden as night deepened, and Ariana felt peace settle over her like a blessing. Tomorrow she'd marry Raphael Santini. Tomorrow she'd step fully into a life that once seemed impossible. Tomorrow she'd promise forever to the man who'd taught her that love could be powerful and gentle all at once. But tonight, in this quiet moment, she was simply grateful. For the journey that had brought her here. For the courage to say yes. For the man who'd looked at her like she was priceless from the very first moment. The wedding was perfect. Small and intimate, just close friends and family gathered in the gallery among paintings that had witnessed their falling in love. Ariana wore white lace that made Raphael's breath catch. Raphael wore black that made him look like every romantic dream she'd ever had. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, silence filled the gallery. Not even her father spoke. I do, Raphael said when prompted, his voice steady and sure. I do, Ariana echoed, and meant it with everything she was. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. And when they turned to face their guests as husband and wife, Ariana saw her father wipe at his eyes. The first crack in his armor she'd witnessed in years. The reception lasted into the night. They danced until Ariana's feet hurt, ate cake that tasted like celebration, accepted congratulations from people who doubted them and people who'd believed from the start. But the best moment came near midnight, when Raphael pulled her aside to a quiet corner. I have something for you, he said. You've already given me everything. Not quite. He handed her an envelope. Open it. Inside were legal documents. It took her a moment to understand what she was reading, and when she did, tears sprang to her eyes. The galleries, she whispered. You're putting them in my name? Joint ownership. Equal partners in everything, business, life, future. He cupped her face. I don't want you to ever feel like my employee again. Like there's an imbalance between us. We're equals, Ariana. In every way that matters. Raphael, this is overdue. You've transformed those galleries, brought life and meaning back to them. They should be yours as much as mine. He kissed her softly. Everything I have is yours. Always was, from the moment you walked into my home and called my Bellini a forgery. She laughed through tears. I love you. I love you more. Impossible. We can spend the rest of our lives arguing about it. Deal. They kissed again, and around them the party continued, but Ariana was lost in this moment. In the man who'd given her not just his name but his trust, his business, his whole heart. They left the reception early, escaping to the estate under a canopy of stars. In their bedroom, their shared space now, Raphael undressed her slowly, reverently, as if he was unveiling art. My wife, he murmured against her skin. My husband, she breathed back. They made love with the sweetness of a promise kept and the passion of a future beginning. And when Ariana fell asleep in her husband's arms, she dreamed of all the tomorrows stretching before them. The next months unfolded like a beautiful story. They honeymooned in Venice, walking through museums hand in hand, debating artistic techniques and laughing at tourists. They returned to the estate and fell into a rhythm, working together in the galleries, making decisions as partners, building something meaningful with their combined vision. Ariana's relationship with her father slowly, carefully improved. He visited the estate once, walked through the galleries with grudging appreciation, and admitted, quietly, almost inaudibly, that he'd been wrong about Raphael. He loves you, her father said as they stood before the restored Caravaggio. I can see it in how he looks at you, how he defers to your expertise, even in his own home. He respects me. More than that, he cherishes you. Her father was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Ariana, for what I did to you and Marco, for trying to teach you that love was something to be controlled rather than celebrated. Papa, let me finish. He turned to face her. I was wrong, and watching you with Santini, seeing how happy you are, it's shown me what I denied you. What I almost cost you by teaching you to fear love instead of trust it. Ariana felt years of anger and hurt begin to heal. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for proving me wrong. He managed a small smile. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Stronger than me, certainly. They hugged, tentative and awkward, but it was a beginning. 6 months after the wedding, Ariana realized she'd missed her period. Then the next one. She bought a test, took it in the bathroom of the estate while Raphael was in a meeting, and stared at the positive result with a mixture of joy and terror. A baby. They were going to have a baby. She found Raphael in his study, reviewing acquisition proposals. He looked up when she entered, and his smile was automatic and warm. Finished with the restoration inventory? Not yet. I have something to tell you. Something in her voice made him set down his papers immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think it is. I hope it isn't. She was rambling. She took a breath. I'm pregnant. Raphael went very still. Pregnant. About 8 weeks, I think. I haven't seen a doctor yet, but the test was positive, and I've been feeling strange, and... She stopped when she saw his expression. Raphael. He stood, moved around the desk, and pulled her into his arms with a gentleness that made her throat tight. A baby, he said, voice rough. We're having a baby? Yes. You're sure? As sure as a home pregnancy test can make me. He pulled back, and she saw tears in his eyes. I didn't know I wanted this until right now. But now I can't imagine anything more perfect. You're happy? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He placed his hand over her still flat stomach. There's a life in there. A piece of you and me. Something we created from love. Ariana felt her own tears start. I was worried you might think it's too soon. It's perfect timing. He stopped, overwhelmed. Then he laughed, picked her up, and spun her carefully. We're having a baby. His joy was infectious. They spent the rest of the day in giddy planning. Nursery colors, name possibilities, whether to find out the gender or weight. Raphael was on the phone within hours, setting up appointments with the best obstetricians in the country. That night, as they lay in bed with his hand resting protectively over her stomach, Ariana felt a contentment so complete it was almost frightening. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you both, Raphael replied, and she felt his smile against her hair. The pregnancy transformed Raphael into someone even more devoted and protective than before. He researched nutrition, insisted on accompanying her to every doctor's appointment, and treated her like she was made of glass. I'm pregnant, not fragile, she protested when he tried to carry her up the stairs for the 3rd time that week. Indulge me. I've never done this before. Neither have I. Then we'll figure it out together. He set her down in their bedroom, then knelt and pressed a kiss to her growing belly. But I'm allowed to be overprotective. It's in the husband and father job description. She ran her fingers through his hair, loving him so much it hurt. You're going to be an amazing father. I'm going to try. I want our child to grow up knowing they're loved. Knowing that love is strength, not weakness. That it's worth any risk, any sacrifice. You'll teach them that just by being yourself. They found out at 20 weeks that they were having a girl. Raphael cried in the ultrasound room, holding Ariana's hand and staring at the grainy image of their daughter like it was the most beautiful art he'd ever seen. A girl, he kept repeating. We're having a daughter. You're not disappointed it's not a boy? Disappointed. He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. I get to raise a daughter as strong and brilliant as her mother. How could I possibly be disappointed? They named her Isabella, after Raphael's grandmother who'd taught him about art and love and the importance of beauty in a harsh world. And when Isabella Rose Santini was born on a spring morning 8 months after they'd learned of her existence, Ariana understood for the first time what it meant to love something more than your own life. Raphael held his daughter with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. She's perfect, he whispered. Ariana, she's absolutely perfect. She has your eyes. She has your strength. I can already tell. He looked at Ariana with so much love it took her breath away. Thank you. For her. For us. For giving me a family when I'd convinced myself I didn't need one. You're welcome. Ariana was crying too, hormones and joy and exhaustion making everything more vivid. I love you, Raphael. I love you. Both of you. Forever. The years that followed were the happiest of Ariana's life. Isabella grew from baby to toddler to a fierce, curious little girl who had Raphael wrapped around her tiny finger. The galleries flourished under their joint leadership, becoming some of the most respected institutions in Europe. Raphael never lost his intensity, his obsessive need to protect and cherish his family. But now that devotion had expanded to include Isabella, and watching him with their daughter made Ariana fall in love with him all over again every single day. She thought sometimes about the girl she'd been when she'd first walked into the Santini estate. Young, determined, armor-clad against a world that had taught her love was transactional. She barely recognized that girl now. Because Raphael had taught her something different, had shown her through action and sacrifice and unwavering devotion that love could be pure, that it could be given freely, without conditions or cost, that the right person wouldn't try to own you, they'd try to earn you every single day. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Raphael planned an elaborate dinner at the gallery where they'd married. Isabella stayed with Ariana's father, who'd become a devoted grandfather, determined to give his granddaughter the unconditional love he'd failed to give his daughter. 5 years, Raphael said, raising his wine glass. 5 years since you agreed to be my wife. Best decision I ever made. Best decision I ever made, too. Even when I was terrifying and obsessive and proposing after 3 months? Especially then. She clinked her glass against his. You taught me what real love looks like, Raphael. Patient and fierce and willing to burn down the world to protect what matters. Only for you. Only ever for you. He reached across the table, took her hand. I want more. More what? More years. More memories. More children if you want them. More of everything with you. His eyes were soft and serious. I want to grow old with you, Ariana. Watch our daughter grow up. Maybe give her siblings. Build a life so full of love that we forget what loneliness felt like. I already forgot. She squeezed his hand. The moment I met you. Liar. You thought I was arrogant. I thought you were arrogant and attractive and dangerous in all the best ways. She stood, moved around the table to sit in his lap. And I was right about all of it. Raphael wrapped his arms around her, and they sat like that in the quiet gallery, surrounded by art and history and 5 years of loving each other well. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Choosing this life? The intensity, the complications, all of it. Never. Not even once. She kissed him softly. You're the best choice I ever made, Raphael Santini. The bravest, scariest, most worthwhile choice of my entire life. I love you. I love you more. Still impossible. We'll keep arguing about it. For the rest of our lives. They kissed in the gallery where their story had truly begun, and Ariana felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This life, this love, this man, all of it exactly as it was meant to be. She'd walked into his world broken and guarded, taught by a cruel father that love was weakness and poverty made you disposable. She'd been destroyed once by a man who'd taken money to leave her. But Raphael had shown her something different, had proved through patience and devotion and unwavering commitment that real love didn't calculate costs. It didn't demand or control or abandon when things got hard. Real love stayed, fought, sacrificed everything for the person who mattered most. And in learning that lesson, in letting herself be loved completely and loving him back with the same intensity, Ariana had finally found what she'd been searching for since she was 17. Not just a partner, not just a husband, but home. 3 years later, Ariana sat in the gardens of the Santini estate, watching Raphael teach Isabella about the roses while their son, 2-year-old Marco, named after the boy who'd taught her what love wasn't so she could recognize what love was, tottered after butterflies in the grass. The galleries had expanded to 4 locations. Ariana had published 2 books on art restoration. Raphael had been offered positions on a dozen boards and committees, all of which he'd turned down because they interfered with family time. Mama, Isabella ran over, holding a rose Raphael had helped her cut. For you. It's beautiful, baby. Ariana accepted the flower, pulled her daughter into her lap. Did Papa teach you which ones to pick? The pink ones. Because pink is for love and you're full of love. Isabella said it matter-of-factly, the way 8-year-olds did, as if love was the simplest thing in the world. Maybe it was when you did it right. Raphael approached with Marco on his shoulders, and Ariana's heart did what it always did when she saw her husband with their children. Swelled until it felt too big for her chest. Room for 2 more? Raphael asked. Always. He sat beside her, Marco climbing down to join his sister, and they stayed like that as the sun set over the gardens. A family built from broken pieces and second chances and the stubborn belief that love was worth any risk. Ariana leaned her head on Raphael's shoulder, breathing in the scent of roses and evening air and home. Happy, he murmured. Deliriously. Good. He kissed her temple. That's all I ever wanted. To make you happy. You do. Every single day. And it was true. He'd taken a girl who'd believed love was transactional and shown her it could be transformational. Had loved her so fiercely and completely that she'd learned to love herself the same way. Her father had ruined her first love, taught her that poverty made you disposable, that beautiful things weren't meant for girls like her. But 5 years after fate had walked her into Raphael Santini's world, Ariana knew different. Beautiful things were meant for anyone brave enough to reach for them. Love was meant for anyone courageous enough to risk their heart. And happy endings were meant for people who refused to stop believing they were possible. She'd found hers in a man who'd looked at her like she was priceless from the very first moment. Who'd given her freedom when he could have demanded obedience. Who'd burned down threats and rebuilt safety and proved every single day that she was worth any sacrifice. Raphael Santini had saved her. But more importantly, he'd taught her how to save herself. And together, they'd built something neither of them had dared to hope for. A love that was fierce and gentle, obsessive and freeing, powerful enough to overcome anything. Even the darkness of their pasts. Especially that. Because love, real love, the kind worth having, didn't avoid the darkness. It brought its own light. The end. Thank you for reading this story of obsession, redemption, and love that conquers all. If this journey moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more dark romance stories where fate brings broken hearts together and love proves stronger than fear.